Awesome. Again, thank you all so much for joining us today. We know that July is such a busy time of the year for everybody, and so we really appreciate everyone taking the time out of their schedule to meet with us today to talk about a topic that's really important, especially as all of us as a nation, we're starting to get back out into the field and recruit more. And so it's important for us to have reminders about the importance of safety. And so today's presentation is entitled Never Give Safety the Day Off, Safety Tips for MEP Staff. While a lot of the stuff that we're going to be talking about today focuses on recruiters and identification and recruitment, these are tips that can be used by all migrant education program staff as they go out into the field. My name is Justin Settles. I am the project specialist for the Identification and Recruitment Consortium, and thank you all. So as I mentioned, today we're going to be focusing on safety. As a job that involves working out in the field, visiting the communities where our students and families and workers live, we are frequently required to be in remote areas. And so a lot of times migrant education program staff can run into challenges and situations that they are unfamiliar with. We can oftentimes run into things that are unexpected. And some of those times, we can find ourselves in situations where our safety can be at risk. Personal safety should always be a top priority for all migrant education program staff and for all recruiters. During this presentation, we will hear some true stories from recruiters about incidents that they have had in the field, and then we will share with you all some helpful practices and tips so that MEP staff can be prepared for whatever they encounter in the field. And since this is such an important topic, I do want to take the time to let you all know that this presentation is being recorded and will be uploaded to the IDRC website so that you all can come back to it later, or you can share it with your teammates, other recruiters, even possibly some service providers, if it's something that they're interested in looking at too. And so be on the lookout in your email for the link to the presentation. We will also be uploading it to our YouTube channel. So one thing that I wanted to share with everybody is I would love to hear feedback from you all. And so we have a nice group of people here with us today. And so during the presentation, feel free, to share in chat some situations that you have encountered in the field or that you might be concerned with, that maybe you are unsure how to handle or were unsure at the time how to handle it. And at the end of the presentation, if we have time, we'll review some of those, look at and see, what could have been done, trying to get some tips about those situations. So feel free, like I said, to comment and chat as we go along. So to begin with, let's talk about why safety is so important. Safety for all migrant education program staff should always be a top priority. Part of learning the job and becoming good at the job, part of becoming a good recruiter, is learning when to recognize what could potentially be a safety risk so you can take the necessary precautions, and as well so you can know when to pull out. I think a lot of times, especially for recruiters, we feel pressured to go into situations where we feel unsafe. We feel pressure to sign up more students. We feel pressure to get those COEs. And part of becoming a good recruiter is learning how to draw those boundaries, learning when to recognize when a situation is not safe, and recognizing when you need to maybe come back at a later time, come back with somebody else, or pull out altogether. Remember that safety is not just about knowing what to do when you're in a situation. Safety is also about knowing what to do to avoid those situations where you or those you are with could be put at risk. So as we go through today's presentation, just some topics that we're going to be covering. Number one, we're going to be talking about some general safety guidelines. We're going to start with those. We're going to talk about some vehicle safety, as well as what to do, while you're on site. So when you're visiting those families, those houses, agribusinesses, actually being in the agricultural fields. what to do when you're leaving a site or leaving the home, how to handle harassment if you encounter harassment while out in the field, some emergency protocols. So what to do if you do find yourself in an emergency situation. And then we're going to close by showing some recommended items that we feel, all recruiters should have with them while they're out in the field to help them stay safe, as well as safety apps that you can download for your phone that'll help you stay safe out there. So to begin with, let's talk about the first rule of safety. The most important rule for any migrant education program staff is that you should always, always trust your instincts. If you have doubts or feel as if a situation is potentially dangerous, don't hesitate to leave and contact your supervisor immediately. If it's a situation where somebody is in danger, before contacting your supervisor, be sure to contact 911 or emergency services. I think one of the biggest tools that we as recruiters have while working out in the field is our gut instincts. We know the areas that we are working in. Many of us live in the areas and communities where we are working in. And because we know them so well, we know how to recognize when something is different, when something is up, and when something might be off. And so make sure that you are always trusting your instincts and not pushing yourself to go too far if you feel like something is wrong. Always make sure that you carry your cell phone while you are out in the field, and always make sure you have a charger in your car. We're going to talk about this a little more later, but it's so important and crucial. You don't want to be left out in the field, with a cell phone that's dead and no way to get back. And so make sure you always have your phone and your charger with you. You want to make sure that you always carry some form of identification. Have a badge that you can wear that's visible, a name tag that you can place, put it on the outside of your jacket, put it, on a pocket, on your chest, somewhere so that everybody can see. And make sure that you always have business cards. Business cards are very, very helpful to help identify you. It's something that people can take with them so that they can remember you for later. Many migrant families that I've found and met all across the country, they keep their business cards that they get from recruiters for many years at a time. And so make sure that you have those business cards. And if you don't have business cards, contact your supervisor to see if you might be able to get some. And as you're getting out in the field, always remember that you want to wear clothes that are work appropriate and comfortable so they don't restrict movement. If you know you're going to be out in the fields, out visiting workers as they are working, don't wear really nice, expensive heels or loafers, because they can get muddy. They can prohibit you from being able to get out. Make sure that you're wearing walking shoes. Make sure that you're wearing boots, something that you feel comfortable and that is going to be able to, work with what you have to do. Likewise, you want to make sure that you don't dress too professional. Sometimes when you dress too professional, it can cause and create suspicion. If people see somebody in, a business suit and tie, or see somebody in a fancy work, skirt or dress walking out into the field, they're going to look out of place and going to wonder while you're there. So you don't want to dress too professionally. Make sure you dress, for the job, you dress comfortable. Many states even offer articles of clothing for their recruiters to wear. I've seen states that have, migrant education program shirts or even hats. And so if you can get something like that as well to identify yourself, be sure to use those as well. So now let's move on to vehicle safety. So again, these are all real stories from recruiters that have been out in the field. So I was one day out visiting families, and I had one last family on my list. I had saved the family for the end of the day because they were far away and isolated from the other families. It had been a rough day. Several of the families were not doing well, and I really just wanted to visit the family and get home to rest. I heard a beeping noise from my car. I looked down and I saw that I was running dangerously low on gas. I looked around but couldn't find a gas station, and out my phone, I had when I got out my phone, I had no signal to access the GPS. This is a situation that I think many of us can relate to. Oftentimes, we spend long days out visiting families, and at the end of the day, when we only have one or two families to visit, we only have one or two farms that left to go and see. We try to push ourselves to make sure that we get all that we need to get done accomplished. And a lot of times when we push ourselves like that, we miss and don't pay attention as much as we should. We might miss and not see that we're running low on gas. We might miss and see, that our phone isn't as charged as it should be. And it can put us in situations where we are potentially at a safety risk. And so to help prevent these situations, with anything happening with your vehicle, vehicles are so crucial for the work that we do. We have to be able to get out there. We have to be able to travel. So we need to make sure that our vehicles are always at top notch. So you want to make sure that you're performing regular maintenance on your vehicle so you can help reduce those safety risks. You want to have regular oil changes, routine checkups. Make sure you get your tires checked as well. And so, we say here to keep your tires properly inflated, but the reality is you also need to make sure your tires are in good condition. You want to watch the, tread on your tires to make sure it's not too worn down. You can always take it, to a tire shop and have them look at it. You also want to make sure that there's no holes in the tires as well. That could be potential leaks. A lot of times as we're out visiting farms, visiting these businesses, we're driving in places, that aren't necessarily paved roads. And a lot of times, we might, stumble across some nails. We might stumble across some, sharp rocks or metal. I've seen it all out there on the farms that we might not see, we might run over. And so, those things can stick around in your tires for a while. So you want to make sure that you're getting your vehicle and your tires looked at and maintained. When you're out visiting a location, make sure, or you're even out driving, make sure you keep your doors locked at all times. And if you do have any valuables, don't keep them out on the seats, in the front seats or the back seats where people can see them. Make sure you put all your valuables in the trunk to hide them well. I've heard stories from recruiters who are out visiting families and they forgot to lock their cars and they come back, and their laptops or computers are missing. And so keep only your valuables in the trunk, lock your doors at all times. When you do go out, you want to make sure you have a plan for what to do in case you do have an incident or if something were to happen, with your vehicle. So, have a plan. What are you going to do if you do have an accident while out in the field? If you're out visiting families an hour from home and you have an accident in your vehicle, what are you going to do? What are you going to do if your car breaks down? Do you know a place that you can call to help you? Do you know somebody that you can call to help? What about if you have a flat tire? If you don't know how to change a flat tire, or if you've never done it before, I recommend just Googling or searching on YouTube. There's a ton of great tutorials that you can find out there online that you can watch that teach you, basic car maintenance or how to change a flat tire. I myself, have tried to learn a lot about basic car maintenance so that I can work more out in the field just by watching videos on YouTube. And if you have any other mechanical problems with your vehicle, just make sure that you have a plan ahead of time so that you know how to respond when the worst happens. Likewise, you want to make sure that you always have gas in the car. You don't want to be in a situation where you might run out of gas. So make sure that the car is at least got, quarter to half a tank, whatever you feel the most comfortable with. And also be sure to look up locations of gas stations along your route. A lot of times when we're going to new areas, we don't know where we need to go to get gas. And so make sure that you look up ahead of time, especially in the more remote areas, how to get gas so that when you do have to fill up, you'll be able to. Before you go out into the field, you can always map your route. You could use Google Map to input the places that you want to go to see which way you need to travel, or you can use other mapping services like Batch Geo so that you can be familiar with the areas that you're going to. If you're driving to an area that doesn't have the internet, most mapping services nowadays allow you to download areas of maps before leaving so that you can access them without the internet or without phone service. And when you're out in the field, make sure you're always parking in well-lit areas that are safe distances from your destination. And if you are working in pairs with somebody, try to always park next to your colleagues. Lastly, you're going to want to make sure when you do park that you're going to park in an area with a clear exit and where the driver's door is easily accessible. You don't want to park in a place where you can easily get blocked. You want to make sure you're parking where you can pull out as easily as possible and where there's nothing that can obstruct you from actually getting into your car. Here's another story from a recruiter that was working out in the field. One morning, I was really rushed to go out recruiting. I had not gotten enough sleep and was worried about making it on time to the processing plant to meet with the workers as they went on break. I left my house as fast as possible, but quickly found myself in trouble. I had forgotten to look at the weather forecast, and as I drove through the mountain roads, it began to snow really hard and I could no longer see the road. Again, this goes back to what we were talking about with the last scenario, the last story we heard. Oftentimes as recruiters, when we feel pressured to go find more students, to go visit more places, we allow ourselves to forget the details that are really important. And it's those details that can put us in harm's way if we're not careful. In this situation here, the recruiter, because they were so focused on meeting with those workers, they didn't check the weather. They didn't look to see what the day was going to be like. And they rushed and they found themselves in a situation that could be dangerous. Weather can greatly influence working conditions for migrant farm workers, and it can have a huge impact on recruiting. Some days it's good for there to be a little rain because when you go out, you know that the workers are most likely going to be home. However, if there's big storms, that can put you at danger. And so you want to always be on the lookout for any inclement or severe weather that can happen. Check the weather forecast ahead of time just to make sure. Always look, don't just look at the general forecast, but get in and look at the hour by hour so you can see exactly the time that you're going to be out there, what the weather conditions are going to be like. And I know it's always, really good to have that weather app on your phone, just because most phones come with a weather app. There are many other apps that you can search for. There are many apps that you can search for on the App Store as well. And so look for a weather app that works best for you. And like I said, weather can greatly influence the working conditions for migrant farm workers. I think we're seeing that a lot, especially this summer. We've seen some severe weather all across the country with some severe storms, as well as severe heat waves. And those situations can be very dangerous. And so as you're looking at the weather, be sure to look for those conditions that could potentially be harmful for, possible workers that you meet, and bring adequate supplies to help them. If the weather's going to be really hot, bring extra bottles of water or cold packs that you can hand out to to workers in the field that you meet. So not to just build your network, but to really help them make sure that they are being safe. As you get out there, if you do encounter a situation that is caused by, severe weather, such as a flooded road, down power lines, it's always best to turn around and find either an alternate route or to postpone the visit for another day. There's been many times when I was working in Tennessee where I would go out into the mountains and I would find a road, where the creek had run over or a river had washed under the creek. And too many times I've seen recruiters that are willing to take that risk and to push through the water to try to get to the other side. But, if something were to happen it could be deadly and it's not worth it. And so if you do see or encounter those situations in the field, it's always best to turn around, postpone, find another way to get there. Just as we were talking about with vehicles, you want to always make sure that you have a plan in case something were to happen. If, it starts to snow, what are you going to do if you're one of those states that can get a lot of snow? Check with your supervisor to see if your state has a policy on what staff should do in case there is an inclement weather, and make sure you're always communicating. Your state might already have plans in place for what to do in case severe weather happens. And so reach out and talk to your supervisor and ask them, so that you can learn. Here's another story about working and visiting site. I was giving a short English lesson to an OSY student who had just arrived from Guatemala. While we were sitting in the student's bedroom, while I was explaining basic English verbs, all of a sudden the student's older roommate entered the room and wanted to have an English lesson as well. I tried to explain that the student was too old to qualify, but he refused to take no for an answer. The older roommate stood in the doorway and got angry. The man wouldn't let me leave until I also taught him some English. A lot of times, if we're not careful, we can find ourselves, in situations that could potentially be dangerous. We have to make sure that we are not letting ourselves get too comfortable. And again, that we're always allowing ourselves an exit or a way of escape. Before you ever enter a location, whether it be a house, a farm, a business, always try to look or notice some unusual smells. I know as recruiters, we get out there, we visit dairies, we visit chicken. We're familiar with some very strange smells. But when I talk about unusual smells, I mean more if you smell gas, electrical fires, any fire hazards, as well as, any smells that may be associated with the manufacturing of substances. Some of us, as we're out visiting remote areas, we can find ourselves in the types of areas where people might be making or manufacturing controlled substances. It's happened before. And so you want to make sure that you always be on the lookout. And if you do smell something unusual, again, turn away, and it's best to postpone it for another day. Never enter a location if you feel unsafe or if you're unsure. Remember that all work conversations, all recruitment can be done on the front porch or in the front stoop of a house. You realistically can do all the work from outside. You don't have to step into a house. Carry the tools with you, such as folding tables and chairs. You can leave them in your trunk. That will help facilitate and make being able to work outside in a public space easier. And if you ever do feel unsafe, you're unsure, or you're even uncomfortable about going alone to an area for any factors that you may have experienced, be sure to contact your supervisor, ahead of time or in the moment, so that they can help organize for a partner to accompany you, or so that they can help you with find a different solution. Again, it's always important to maintain those open lines of communication with your supervisor so that you can let them know what's going on. In the case that you are working from home, it is recommended, again, that recruitment and tutoring should only take place in a common public space, such as a living room or a kitchen area. No matter how comfortable you feel with somebody, no matter how comfortable you feel with a family, it's always best for privacy, for safety, that anything that happens work-related happens in those common public spaces where everything can be easily seen. If you do not feel comfortable entering a home, you can, as I mentioned, recruit or tutor outside. For some states that have very cold months or very severe weather during the winter, we have seen recruiters that have asked local schools to help set up meetings within the schools or to give them space. I've seen recruiters reach out to schools where they can go and, use the lunchroom on the weekends or other situations to help make it a little easier to meet with families. If you are working with minors in a home, you also should always make sure that a parent or guardian is on site. We know that oftentimes we can get really comfortable with families, and if the mom or dad has to step away to go to the store, maybe they just leave an older sibling. But if there are minors in the house, it's always best to make sure that you have that parent or guardian there. Again, for privacy, for accountability reasons, and to make sure for your safety as well as the safety of any of the students. And if there is a perceived risk, again, if at any point you do feel that your life is in danger or that the life of somebody that you are with is in danger, reach out to emergency services, call 911, and let your supervisor know. Now, what about when we're leaving the site or leaving a house? This recruiter said, I was visiting a house in the mountains of Tennessee to visit with a family. The household was isolated and had a long uphill driveway. After speaking with the family, I turned to leave and a dog came out from under the porch and began barking. I saw the dog and tried to back away slowly. However, 5 other large dogs quickly came around to the back of the house. Before I knew what was happening, all 6 of the dogs had surrounded me and were preventing me from leaving. The dogs barked violently and began to nip at my feet. When we did a poll right before starting the presentation today, one of the things that we asked is, what are the kind of things that make you feel unsafe out in the field? And the number one answer that everybody put was dogs. As we're out visiting farms, we're out visiting housing sites, we often run into stray dogs, and they can be scary, especially if they're not friendly dogs. Many times we find dogs that are a little bit grumpy, that might be barking a lot or might feel intimidating. Many of us have fears of dogs, either from past experiences or other things that have happened. And so, it's understandable to be, to have those safety concerns. So a couple things to keep in mind is you always, when you're leaving a site, you want to make sure that as you walk out, that you have your car keys out and ready to go. Make sure that if you have a remote lock, that you're able to, unlock the car as you approach. Don't wait until you get to the car, because you want to make sure that you're letting it be as easy as possible to actually get into the car. Before stepping out, always open your eyes, take a look out, see what is in the area, see what is around your car, try to find or see if there's any potential safety hazards, that you might see, and pay attention. Sometimes, like the story that we just heard, we might not see everything. We might not know that there are 5 dogs under the porch. And if that's, the case, we can only do the best that we can. But you want to make sure that we are always on the lookout, keeping our eyes open for those potential safety hazards. And following whatever visit you have done, you always want to leave the area immediately. I know we as recruiters, we have a habit, especially if we're visiting a farm or a business, of sitting in our cars after talking to somebody and writing notes down, whether it be in our notepad or writing notes on our phone. But it's always best, to not remain on site just for safety purposes. Don't sit in our car and wait for notes. Go to a public area or go down the road where you can write those notes. Go to a place where you might be seen a little bit more. And to talk a little bit more specifically about dogs, we've all had those experiences, as I mentioned, and you can buy dog pepper spray in stores that you save. You're going to have a situation where you show up and there's an unfriendly dog. When I was working in Tennessee, there was one family that lived on a tobacco farm, and they had a dog that was so wild. And every time you showed up, it would act like it was a fight to the death, just bark and snarl. And the family just said, "Hey, you just need to keep a stick in your car so you can smack the dog when you arrive." But we don't want to do that. We want to make sure that we're protecting ourselves. And so, go, if you feel or find yourself in situations where you're meeting a lot of dogs that are um, dangerous, get that dog pepper spray to bring with you. Get a dog whistle, something that might distract them as well. I've seen other recruiters that they keep dog treats in their cars so that they can hand them out to dogs that they meet. And that's been helpful. I've seen other recruiters that keep things like just cheap old tennis balls so that if there is a situation where they have a dog that's following them, they can toss and throw the tennis ball to try to get its distraction, to get it to distract it. If at any time, an animal does bite you while you're out in the field, always call a doctor immediately. Go see a doctor, go to the hospital and have a rabies shot just to make sure. I was out visiting a hotel where we have previously had families living. I spoke to a few families, signed a few COEs, and as I was walking back to the car, I was approached by a young man and woman who asked me for money. When I said no, they continued to insist and began following me. It made me very uncomfortable. I ran back to my car and left in a hurry. I wanted to tell someone so others would be careful, but I did not know what to do. Unfortunately, for a lot of us, as we go on site, visiting different locations, we can encounter situations where we're being harassed. I've seen recruiters that have been followed before. I've seen, we encounter situations where people respond very negatively to us, where they might seem like they're angry, yelling for whatever reason it may be. And so these are situations that we have to, keep in mind, and we have to know what to do. And it's always better to plan ahead of time thinking about it. So number one, you should know that all migrant education program staff have the right to work in a safe environment and not face harassment of any kind. It's unfortunate how many times I've heard recruiters mention some things that have been said to them while out in the field, some things that farm workers have said or even farm owners have said while they're out in the field, or even family members from families of students, and they respond with, "Well, that's just part of the job." But that's not true. We all have the right to work in a safe environment, and we don't have to face harassment. And so know that as you're out in the field, if those situations are happening, that you do not have to stand for it. You do not have to take it. If somebody is harassing you, immediately leave the situation. Likewise, while you're out in the field, you always want to make sure that you have safety items with you. So make sure, you bring pepper spray. Pepper spray can be gotten from fairly cheap from, a lot of different places. You can buy it online. I've seen it at athletic stores across the country. Sometimes I've seen it even at Walmart's in their hunting departments, depending on the state. So bring, you can keep a keychain of pepper spray or keep it in your car so that you have it close at hand to use it just in case. Like I said, always leave the site at the first hint of danger or harassment and alert your supervisor. You don't have to wait until it happens multiple times to leave. After the first time, that happens where somebody is harassing you or showing, severe disrespect, again, you don't have to take it. You can leave and call and let your supervisor know so that they can document it and record it for their records. Because it's important that we have a document of these incidents so that we can help keep other recruiters safe. When we don't report things back, we can potentially put our coworkers at harm's way because they could enter into situations that are dangerous without even knowing it. So you always want to make sure, again, that you keep up the open line of communication with your supervisor You let them know everything that's happening, everything that's going on, and everything that you encounter, so that you can make sure that everyone is being safe. If someone is harassing you or following you, call someone you trust to let them know, to be on the phone with you while you leave. Or if you don't have anybody that you can call a coworker, or if you have to, you can always fake a phone call to try and escape the situation. A lot of times, if people know that you were talking to somebody else, they will stop, because they're scared of being found out. If you are afraid or suspect, that you are in danger, you should go to a previously identified safe person that you know on site. If you know that there's somebody there that you can trust, if there's a supervisor, a contractor that you've had previous relationships with, the farm owner as well, go to that person you trust and ask them to accompany to your car. If you feel it's unsafe, it's always best, not walk to the car alone, to have someone help take you with you. Likewise, a lot of times we encounter situations that might not equal up, to the level of harassment, but they are people responding very negatively and being very rude. In those situations, that can feel like a safety risk, because we don't know, how or what the person is going to do. If they get angry with you just for being there, for visiting their workers, for talking to them, it can be difficult. And so again, remember that you don't, have to, you have the right to work in an environment where it's safe and where people are respecting you. And so when somebody is responding negatively, number one, keep in mind that the problem is very, very rarely you. A lot of times when people respond negatively, for us as recruiters, migrant education program staff, it is because there are outside factors that are influencing their mood. Maybe they're not having the best day. Maybe it's not been the best year. Maybe it's a farmer and this season has been horrible. And so they just want to be able to make their money. And now they're worried that you're showing up and you might be an inspector, you could be immigration, and that's scary for them. And so they respond in aggression and anger because they're worried that you might take away what they have. So keep in mind that the issue is not you, and try not to take that personally. Don't take those negative experiences back with you. I know many recruiters, days after having a negative experience with a farmer, will still be sitting there thinking about what they could have done better. It's always great to want to have better interactions, but don't let it, control you. Don't take those experiences back home with you. Just let it go. Now let's talk a little bit about social media safety. Oops. Our team has been working hard to increase our presence on social media. We have been trying to reach out to new families and get our name out in the community. However, recently, a new recruiter was given access to our Facebook page and accidentally posted some inappropriate articles because they forgot to switch to their personal account. We had to spend several days reaching out to any families that could see the Facebook page in order to apologize to them. We live in a new world where recruiting is starting to change. We're moving into the age where now everybody has a cell phone, everybody has social media, everybody has Facebook, and so these are new routes where we can start reaching out and creating a bigger presence in the community. We can create Facebook pages for the migrant education program and invite families to see it. And in doing so, we can start building our network beyond what we might be able to do in person. And so these are all great things, but it also brings about new safety concerns. You don't want people accidentally posting inappropriate things on the page or using the page for inappropriate means. And so to begin with, we recommend, if you are going to be using social media for recruiting, don't use any personal social media accounts for MEP business. Only post information related to the migrant education program. A lot of times, I've seen recruiters use their personal social media, to try to reach out to families. And that can be tricky because you have to balance, again, what's appropriate and what's inappropriate for your work relationship, for a teacher-student relationship as well, you know? And so we recommend instead that if you're going to be using social media, you know, create, you know, the migrant education program or a business account that you can use, even if it's, you know, just a personal page for, you know, you as a recruiter, so that you can reach out to families, so you can help distinguish between the personal and the professional. Likewise, just for boundaries reasons, you know, we as recruiters, we need help sometimes setting boundaries because we want to do so much and we want to help families so much. But the reality is we have to be able to create safe boundaries in, you know, our professional lives. You know, we don't want families to become too dependent on us for information. We don't want them coming to us at all hours of the day. You know, we want them to respect our time as well. And for us, that can be very overwhelming. When we have so many families coming to us, it can be really easy to get burnt out. So we want to make sure that we are creating those boundaries. And so when you create that professional social media page, instead of using your personal page, you're helping to set up those limits so that families know to only contact you on the business page. So when it is time, you know, to have your downtime, your personal time, you can do so. Before creating a social media account for work, you always want to check with your supervisor or your state to see if there is a pre-existing social media policy. Many states already have, especially at the Department of Education level, established social media rules to help protect staff, students, and student families. So no matter what you do, you want to make sure that you are properly following and obeying the rules for your state that have been set. And one other thing, as I mentioned, talking about boundaries, a thing that I have found helpful is I've seen recruiters, sometimes they post on their page exactly what hours they will be accessing it. And so just kind of like you're setting up office hours or work hours, you post clearly on the page what hours you will be interacting or responding on your account so that people will know when they can get a hold of you. Again, to help set up those boundaries so people aren't reaching out at all hours of the day, trying to get to you when you're trying to have your personal downtime. It's always important for your social media pages to only allow approved users to post. This is especially true for team pages. For example, we know South Carolina has been doing great with their Facebook page, but all information that's posted on the page goes through two staff who are the administrators of the page. And even though all recruiters are able, you know, to send in things to be posted, those two administrators are the only people that can actually do the posting. That way, you know, it helps to filter the content that's being shared into making sure that everything that is being shared is aligned with, you know, the purpose of the page, the vision the program has for the page, as well as making sure it's appropriate. And so if the page is going to be a team effort, make sure that, you know, only select key people have that option and ability, you know, to be posting. Make sure that you don't post any pictures or stories on social media without first obtaining written consent from the parties involved. You know, if you're posting stories, always try to change, you know, the names of the students if possible. Likewise, if you're posting, you know, captions, don't tag or name anybody unless you have that written permission. It's always good to have the written consent form for pictures that you have it on file, easy to access, so that families aren't surprised if their you know, name or photo is out there in the community. After you create your account, also be sure to review the settings. You know, one of the key settings that we have found that's important for people to remember is a settings, you know, that's reviewing all the posts that you're tagged in. Because when you log in, you know, a lot of times when you start creating your account, people are going to want to tag you. Families that, you know, that you've added are going to want to tag you in things. And when people are tagging you in things, it can show up to your account, and that can be very hard to control. And so in order to prevent inappropriate things from showing up from stuff that you're being tagged in, you know, always make sure that you go into your privacy settings and you find that settings for reviewing all posts that you're tagged in, and set it so that nothing is posted until you approve of it. That way, you know, things aren't accidentally slipping by. So now let's talk about what to do in case there's an emergency. Luckily, I don't have too many stories to share of real emergencies happening out in the field, but it's always good to talk about it just in case. As we were talking about from other situations, it's always best to have a plan in case of an emergency. It's always best to know what you're going to do ahead of time before anything happens. You don't want to be panicking in the moment. You want to be able to have a plan so you can respond. If you have a vehicle emergency, as we talked about before, inform your supervisor and call roadside assistance if available. If roadside assistance is unavailable, see if there's other MEP staff in the area or call 911 if it's possible. Here's some items that we really recommend everyone bringing with them while they're out in the field. If you do have a medical issue that people need to be made aware of, always make sure that you have a medical ID on hand, as well as to have that information programmed in your cell phone. Make sure you have 911 programmed into your phone for quick and easy access in case you have to call quickly. You want to make sure that you have identification badge and business cards so that you can easily identify yourself while you're out to anybody that might ask to see. Many times when we encounter people that are responding negatively, just having that opportunity, to share our business cards so they can see that we're legit really does go a long way to helping calm down the situation. Make sure that you have an emergency flashlight or phone charger with you. I always try to keep 2 phone chargers in my car just in case anything does happen. With my first charger, I always have that backup. You can now also get like portable chargers that you can buy for fairly cheap, USB chargers that you can keep on your, so that you can just plug your phone into the portable charger and charge that way in case your car charger is not working as well. It's always good to have a flashlight just in case, because you never know, if something happens at night, maybe you have to change your tire at night. I was out one time in the middle of the mountains when I got a flat tire, and it was 11 o'clock at night. There were no street lights around, and I had to change my tire myself. And luckily I had a flashlight in my car that I was able to use. And so you don't want to be stuck in the dark without any light. So always try to bring a flashlight. There's flashlights now that are USB chargeable as well that you can have in your car. And there's even some flashlights that function as phone chargers. I have one of those where, the flashlight has an emergency port where you can connect your phone and the flashlight can charge your phone. So there's all kinds of options out there. As we mentioned, have pepper spray just in case. You can get a keychain and keep it with you. Have hand sanitizer and disinfectant hand wipes. The pandemic is still out there. We hear about new strains. It's important for us to make sure that we are, staying safe and that we are, keeping our bacteria off our hands or out of our cars. We shake a lot of hands out there. We meet a lot of people without the pandemic. And so it's important to make sure that we're not bringing anything, out to the families that we might get, or even if we're out visiting farms. There's been a lot of times where we're out, we're with, the produce, the vegetable, the crops, maybe with the animals even. And, there's chemicals that are being used, chemicals that can get on you, get on your hands. So make sure, you're bringing that hand sanitizer, disinfectant wipes to stay clean. Also, make sure that you have a first aid kit with you just in case. You want to make sure that just in case you do have any medical emergencies, you have the basics there so that you can address any situations that might arise. I've seen some recruiters stumble and get some pretty nasty cuts before. And so make sure that you have that first aid kit so you can clean and address any wounds, or even, maybe you rolled an ankle. And so it's important that you have a wrap to be able to wrap up. Make sure you bring jumper cables. A lot of times, we'll leave our lights on accidentally, our batteries will run down, And so you want to make sure you have those first aid or those jumper cables so that you can jump your car if need to. You don't want to have to rely on somebody else having it as well. And similarly, you want to make sure that you have a functioning and spare tire in your car, that the spare tire is up to date. A lot of times, oh, sorry, Jessica, you had a comment?
Yeah, I was just gonna say they now have, if you don't, if you're gonna be by yourself and your batteries dies, they actually, I'll put a link to it in the chat box. They have these jumper, it looks almost like a flashlight, but it has so many jumps that you can do yourself
You can
without
get
having to have
battery
anybody
packs now.
else come. So
They're
yeah,
like
it's pretty
battery
cool.
packs that you can get for your cars.
Exactly. So that's even better if you know you're going to be remote and by yourself.
Yeah, that's a great idea. And especially, if there was one time where I was out in the field, again, in the mountains, it's always in the mountains. And I had left my lights on and my car battery died. And I think I waited for like an hour until somebody came by that was willing to, give me a jump. And so I think Jessica's idea of having that, battery pack, a lot of them aren't too expensive. And so get one of those and keep it, in your trunk so that you have it just in case.
Well, one other side note on that, sometimes when you park your car, one time I got stuck in the airport because I went all the way to the corner and parked my truck right by the edge of the concrete. And then when I needed a jump, it was dead and there was not a lot of space that I could move it without hitting another car. And so ever since then, I always think if I'm traveling somewhere, I'm going to leave my car for a bit. Am I actually leaving in a place that if I did need a jump, that I actually could get a jump? Or did I park it in a spot that it's going to be pretty impossible?
Yeah. And it goes similarly back to what we were saying, where you always want to make sure that you park your car so that you have a clean exit, preferably in such a way that you can pull out. It's always best, to be able to pull straight forward and go out. And that kind of goes into what, Jessica was saying, so that you have that space, if you need to access the engine of the car in case something does happen. You want to be able to see where you're going when you're leaving instead of having to back out. And so always make sure that you are leaving that space so that in case something happens, you're able, to give yourself a jump if need be. Also, make sure you have an umbrella or a raincoat just in case it is raining. I don't know how many times I personally have been caught out recruiting in the pouring rain without a jump coat or raincoat and just been soaked, having to go and visit families soaking wet. And so make sure that you have something so that you're able to stay dry and stay, safe and healthy as well. You don't want to contract anything because you're wet and cold. Always bring water bottles and healthy snacks. Snacks for you to make sure that you're staying, nutritious while you're out there, as well as, water so that you're not dehydration, especially during the summer, is very bad with recruiters. We want to make sure that we're staying hydrated. We always have enough water with you, and water bottles are always great, and snacks are always great to hand out to workers in the field. They spend long hours in the field and might not always have access to a lot of water. And so we want to make sure that we have those extras to make sure that everybody else is being safe. And lastly, as I mentioned, you want to make sure that you have the materials to be able to recruit out in the field if need be, so that if, you need to recruit, you can, at a camp, for example, where you can't go inside, have that table and blankets so that you can set up and you can have an easy space in a public area outside where people can come to you. Now, we also wanted to share some safety apps that you can download for your phone. Almost all of these are free apps that recruiters around the country have used before. And so there's a link here, or you can search for them in your on the App Store on your phone. Again, as I mentioned earlier, this presentation will be posted in the training portal of the IDRC website. It'll be posted on our YouTube page, and you'll also be able to have access to the PowerPoint presentation and slides for your notes as well. So, you'll have access to the links for these apps as well. And so the first app is called Weather for You, and it's just a free weather app that you can download if you don't already have a weather app that you like on your phone. so that you can see what the weather is like, what the weather is going to be, and track any possible changes that you might encounter. Similarly, as we're going through this, if you in chat have any apps that you would recommend for safety, feel free to share them in the chat. We would love to hear what you use. Maybe that there's some apps out there that you use that we might not be familiar with, and so it'd be great to hear from others. Then there's several of these apps that are specifically, for safety and for alerting others when you're out there. So Companion, Safe Trek, Watch Over Me, Moonlight, Kitestring, and React are all apps that you can download on your phone that are free and that have different kinds of functionality, but they all work very similar in that they allow you, to let somebody know where you are so that they can see where you are at all times. So that if you're entering a situation where you're not sure, you feel it might, there could be an incident and you want to let somebody know, you can use these apps to let them know where you're going to be. And you can set it so it can call somebody if, if you don't contact them in time. It can set it, several of these apps. I believe React is one of the apps where it's kind of like a big button where you open it up on your phone and just very easily you can press it to call an emergency contact, either 911 or somebody that you can pre-program. And so, Kitestring and Watch Over Me, they allow people to actually see, on the GPS where you are so they can know where you are at all times. And so they're very helpful apps, for keeping that lines of communication open so that somebody knows where you are at all times so that you're never truly alone while out in the field. And then lastly, Spot Crime is an app that we've seen recruiters use across the country. It's an app that kind of allows you to see what's going on in your area. Oftentimes we can go into places that we might be unfamiliar with. Maybe, some areas, especially as people are recruiting more and more in cities where there's crime that might be happening, where it might feel unsafe. And so you can use Spot Crime to see exactly what is going on around you. So you can see the things that have taken place over the last few days. So you can kind of be on the lookout. So you can see if there's an active situation or, if there's a situation going on that might be best to avoid. Maybe, you see an area that has a lot of situations going down, a lot of crime. And so if that's the case, you can even call families that live in that area and ask them to meet you somewhere else. And so it's a great app to download so you can be sure and know what's going on to help make sure that you stay safe. Jessica, do you know of any other apps that you would recommend?
No, that was a pretty good list. I just learned listening to you some more.
Yeah. Awesome. Well, at the beginning, we asked for people to share information or any situations that they had. I don't see any in chat, but we can always feel free to send us an email and letting us know if there's a situation that you've encountered. But we have been going for an hour so far. I really appreciate, again, I know it's July. I appreciate everybody taking the time to join with us today. One of the things that we do ask is at the end of our presentations, if everybody could submit a quick survey review form for a training review form for us. I've shared the link in chat to the Survey Monkey. It's a quick, brief survey letting us know how we're doing. We always want to make sure that we're providing the best training possible to everyone around the country. And so we'd love to hear your feedback. So if you wouldn't mind, please, go through submitting a form. You can also, if you've never used the QR code before, it's the box on the screen. It's a digital code that you can use. You just open the camera on your phone, scan the code, and it'll take you straight to the training review form. It'll open up the link so that you can just do it right there. And so it's a real quick and easy way to get access straight to that form. And so we would love if everybody would just be able to do that, to let us know again how we're doing. Let us know if there's any maybe training topics you'd like to hear about in the future. But we thank everybody so much for being here today. We hope everybody has a great July, especially for those that this is their busiest time of the year. We hope it goes well. We look forward to hearing about the amazing work everybody's doing. Here is our contact information. If you ever need to contact us, I'm putting my email address in the chat as well. Again, if there's any safety apps that you know that you use that you would like to share, or any situations that you've encountered where you didn't know how to respond or need advice on, feel free to send me an email and I'd love to get back with you. But again, thank you all so much, and I hope you all have a great rest of your